Welcome to our curriculum committee meeting, and thanks for being here this afternoon. Kelly, if you can go ahead and open us up with our roll call.
Mr. Rudy?
Here.
Mr. Hazelhorst?
Here.
Mr. Heatherly? Dr. Greenlee? Carrie Neri? Here. Jake Hubert?
Here.
Nicole Difford? Here. Elson Lewis? Molly Lilia? Here. Tammy Dutch? Mike Weinbrenner? Tracy Strabacher?
Here.
Wilson Nachum Pasek? Here. Kelly Hanneman? Mary Piskey? Liz Savely? Here. Stephanie Myers? Maria Duarte? Asusana Yarrow.
Thank you, Kelly. Let's see, moving on to our audience to visitors. We have none.
I'm Jordan Collette from the high school in the English department.
I'm Troy Dutch, also from the English department.
Great.
Thanks for being here.
Glad you're here this afternoon.
Glad to be here.
Okay, most of today's show I'm going to turn over to Carrie as she has some information and some pieces for us, and I think that will make up the bulk of our agenda. We also have, Kelly, I think we need to end, we're going to try to end around 4:45, 4:50, so we'll have kind of a hard cap on tonight's this afternoon's meetings. Now, Molly,
I don't think probably let it be late.
Starts at 7 or 8.
So Carrie, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Carl. I'm excited to be here tonight and be able to really talk to the committee about what I've been doing since I've started here in July. So I am Carrie Neary. I am the new curriculum director. I started July 1st. And I had asked Dr. Greenlee if we could have a meeting kind of early in the year before we start all of our curriculum work, just so we can talk about the process that I'd like to use this year. A lot of it's very similar to what we've been doing, but I've added in a few things just to make sure we have a streamlined curriculum. And then also, tying into the assessment plan and kind of how we're going to be building some assessments as well as part of our curriculum work. So that is why I asked this. So really, this is very informational. There are some places where I would really like some feedback, so I'm excited to get that from everybody. So there are 3 documents in front of you, and I know Kelly has the first one pulled up on the screen as well. So this looks similar to what you all have seen before in terms of what Molly used to do in kind of mapping out what we would work on throughout the school year. But I've changed a couple things in terms of maybe some documents that we'll use, and so we'll talk about some of those. But you'll notice if you review this, we have 4 curricular areas that I would like to work on this year. The first 2 being mathematics and science. We've already been working on those, so we'll just continue that work. And I'll talk a little bit about, when we look at some of the other documents, kind of where those teams are, because they've already completed some of the work, and then what our goals will be for this year. And each of those teams are going to be in a little bit different place depending on the grade level, because K-5's math this year has a brand new resource, and so we're kind of learning, and teachers are learning how to implement that. And so one of the things I want us to do is really kind of, when we meet next week, is really choose 3 areas that we want to focus on for the year. It's hard to focus on everything, so I think if we can choose 3 areas to really focus on and do well in year 1, I think that'll help ease everybody's anxiety, and also just help us get good at 3 things, and then we can add 3 more things the next year. And so, but 6, 8, and 9, 12 are in a little bit different place because they didn't adopt a new resource this year. I'm so sorry. For science, they have had their new resources for a little while. We're going to be doing some, with them, we're really going to be diving into some priority work and then some assessment work. And so we'll kind of look at that in a little bit. And then this year I'm also, I would like to start ELA and social science. But we're going to start at the 5th grade level. Sorry, K-4 teachers. And here's my rationale why I wanted to start 5th through 12th with ELA and social studies. Is because in K-4, it's one teacher, that is trying to teach all of those things, and that's very challenging. And so I thought if this year we finish up with some math and science, then next year we can dive into ELA and social studies. That way we don't feel too overwhelmed, and our teachers don't feel too overwhelmed. And so when you're looking at this plan, you'll notice in the K-5 column, you'll only see math and science, and you'll see work days throughout the year. And we already have committees for those. In the 6-8 column, you'll see math and science, and then you'll see ELA and social studies. And I even put 5, 8, so then we know 5th grade is starting then. And then in the 9-12, You'll see math and science continued, and then ELA and social studies added. For those 2 new ones, I only have each of those 3 times a year, just because let's get started, and then we'll continue to build. So next year we might meet 4 times or something. But in terms of mapping it out, that's just kind of how you see how I divided it up this year. With ELA and social science or social studies, I'm starting that on the Institute Day, kind of a half day for 5-8 and half day for 9-12, and I'm going to do that together because ELA and social science, their standards overlap so much that what I want to do to kick it off is to really kind of look at our standards and talk about where do we have overlap. Because then that can help us as we identify our priority standards to make sure that if we identify priority standards that are common, it just helps us with instructing our students around those standards and working smarter and not harder. So we'll do that at 5-8 and then 9-12. But then after that, you'll notice that ELA and social studies is split out because that's when we really get into the grade level and content area standards. So that's just kind of the map of the year. It doesn't give a lot of information on this page except for all of the dates and which groups would be meeting. And I tried to keep testing on there like Molly had done in the past. And I tried to avoid, that's why in March you don't really see anything for K-5 or 6-8 because PARCC testing happens mainly in March. And then I left the high school alone in April because of SAT. Any questions about that? Or it's really just kind of
I like the room.
I stole that from Molly.
Yes. I
stole that from Molly and just thought, hey, this is what everyone's used to. Let's just keep the same
I like
format.
that consistency. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so Kelly, if there's no questions about that, let's talk a little bit about assessment, and then we'll talk about the design tracking documents that you have a copy of that are also linked into that plan. So the next document I have here is just kind of an overview of a balanced assessment system, and I've done some review of where we are as a district, what assessments we currently have, and then kind of maybe what assessments we would need to create at a district level, and then what things are really owned by classroom teachers that the district doesn't need to get involved in. But so I divided this into 3 assessment types. We have external summative assessments, which those are all those things that are required by the state or by the College Board. This is where our 3 through 8th grade students, we have IAR, high school we have SAT and PSAT, our bilingual students we have Access. The ISA is the Illinois Science Assessment, which is 5th grade, 8th grade, and now 11th grade. The state has changed that, so that is, it was biology, and now it will be 11th grade. So that'll be something that we work on just in terms of scheduling, because that'll be new. And then, of course, AP exams for our students that are in AP classes that might take those. And those are all designated. The times are not decided, by the district. It's here are the dates. And so those are really things that are completely outside of our control, but are part of our assessment system. And those external assessments like that are really summative. We can't, as teachers, use them except for more as an autopsy to say, hey, this is where, that's... I know that's a word. But that's what it is. And I will say, I didn't come up with that. A lot of the assessment gurus use that term because that's what they are. You can't do anything with it with your current students. You can reflect on it, and as a district, what I would like to do as we start is really kind of start looking for trends that we can say, okay, over the past 5 years, we've struggled in this area. That's a trend that we probably need to address in our curriculum. But it's not anything that's particular with, that we can make changes right away in our instruction because we don't receive the results until later. The second type of assessment are district common assessments. And some of these are, and you'll notice I have there kind of the definition or assessments required by the district. These are things that we choose to give. Some of them are externally created, like NWEA MAP that we use in grades 2 through 8 across the district, and we're piloting K1 in some of our buildings. We use Ames Web for reading fluency, and that's K4. We use F&P, Fountas and Pinnell, in our K4 buildings. We also use Words Their Way, which I missed on here, so I need to add that, because that is something that we use at elementary as well. And then the third piece the last piece I have there, it says curriculum-based assessments. And that's something that we don't currently have, but that will be part of our curriculum design process. And so I'll talk a little bit about that when we look at that process, the next sheet. But this will be something that we'll be creating in our curriculum teams around our priority standards. If we've identified a certain number of priority standards, then those are the things that we're saying as a district we want our students to master. And we need to have some kind of curriculum-based measure for us to do that. And so that, in my mind, that's part of our plan, is to create those curriculum-based measures. And then that last row, it says classroom assessments. These are assessments created or selected by the classroom teacher that align to the standards, that align to what they're doing. Those are things that, as a teacher, you have the discretion of how you create those assessments as aligned to the standards. I do know that some of our work, once we get past kind of creating those priority assessments, then we'll also do, I have, some ideas of how we can, how I can come in and support buildings and kind of just like talking about assessment design and in general, just for any type of assessment with teachers. But those classroom-based assessments, those classroom measures, really are owned by the classroom teachers. And so when we think of the assessment system, it's really three-tiered. So we have that external assessment, which no one really has any say over, and we all give. We have those district common assessments that as a district we monitor, we have some oversight in and some support and some creation responsibility. And then we have those classroom level assessments that our classroom teachers really own. That then we can support from a district level maybe around training, but not necessarily around creation. I don't know how, this might be a new concept to everyone, I'm not sure. So I'm happy to, answer questions. I'm not sure if we've ever had anything, from what I saw, we never had anything, just kind of laid this out.
But that aligns to the evaluation, the last hello kind of stuff anyway, as far as, so everybody ought to be somewhat familiar with the assessment thing anyway, through the tier 1, 2, and 3, at the high school level at least. That's, you guys probably wouldn't be as familiar with it, but that's a requirement to state.
Yeah, several years ago, we had time for the assessment training as a district.
Okay.
But that didn't go anywhere.
No, that was way back. You remember?
2009 is when it started.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh, so that's several.
Yes. As far as
Dr.
like.
Brodnick's.
I was going to say, as far as I can recall, it was onward and upward with that one, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Onward and upward.
Yes.
Were her words.
But it's been a really long time. And when we, grade level wise, when we made our current ELA thing.
Curriculum that you have now,
we were asked to make some common assessments, but I don't know that any of them are given consistently at this point. I don't know that they're consistent across the board in the district.
Or if everyone has them. I know I have them and give them, but it's only for our reflection because they're just formative for us. But I know we had like our first one for realistic fiction wasn't that good. We just never had the time to meet again. And I know that's what Molly was starting to work on the last couple of years, trying to find time to carve it out, which was really difficult.
I think the idea was that they would be closer to those curriculum-based assessments, but I wouldn't call them that at all. And I think we were rushed.
You didn't have any training.
Right, no training, and it was a rushed process. So the idea is out there, but I don't know that anyone really knows how to go about doing that or what that process looks like.
You guys can chime in too. This is just it's a committee. I know from high school, because I know you both said high school. They're
We're kind of the same. Finding the time to do that together would be valuable.
No other questions? I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry. Keep talking. Okay. No, and that's good feedback to know that you did have some training, but it was.
Yeah.
That's 10 years ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
He is 9. He'll be 10 next year.
I know, but you would think 2009, you're like, that was long ago. Oh, that was 10 years ago now. Yes, it was. A long time ago. Okay, so then the last thing that I wanted to share with everyone is the curriculum design tracking sheet. that I made, and I'll actually, and we'll look at it here as a kind of a full sheet, and then I'll have, Kelly, I'll have you go back to one of the other documents, and we'll look at some of the links, and explain those. So let me talk a little bit about this and the process that we're looking at here. So this is a curriculum design process that was actually created, I'm following a curriculum design process that was actually created by the Consortium for Educational Change, so CEC. So they came in and did our audit last year for math. And so their curriculum design process, everything that you see here in bold, like forming teams, understanding and implementing standards, determining the assessment methods, all of those components, those are the components of their curriculum design process. So this is not something that I've created out of the blue. I've really just used theirs and then tweaked some of the descriptors underneath, either to fit what we've already done as a district, or to fit kind of what I see, what we might need to do based on where we are right now with what we've done. And some of these things are things that they recommend, and I just tweak the wording or something a little bit. And so when you look at a curriculum design process, the first two pieces, the first two, forming teams and understanding and implementing standards, those are the first two that you have to do in those two orders. Of course, first you have to form the team. You have to bring the people together. That, of course, is easy. But then the next part, the understanding and implementing standards, when you have that team of teachers that are going to work on designing curriculum, you have to first dig into the standards. What is it that we're really looking at? And we have to have some training on the standards, and depending on where we are and how new the standards are, sometimes depends on the amount of training. When we think of, like, Common Core now has been out since 2010. Most English and math teachers are pretty well versed in what the Common Core standards are. But there might still need to be some discussion around, well, what does this actually mean for this grade level? And how does third grade build onto fourth grade? Some of those things to make sure we don't have any gaps. Then as a district, we will determine priority standards. That's something we've already been doing. We've done that for math. We've done that for science. We'll do that for all of our curriculum. And the reason we do that is because there are so many standards. When you listen to some of the really experts out there around curriculum design, they talk about that it would really take you about 22 years to get through all of the K-12 standards. If you to really teach them all to mastery. And so, which is interesting, because we don't have them for 22 years. Which is why we need to pick those priority standards. We don't want them for 22 years. Jake's like, I don't want them for 22 years, no. So that's why we choose those priority standards that are those high leverageable, the ones that really endure, and that do, cross multiple content areas. Anytime we can say, hey, this is applicable in this content and this content, that's a more leverageable standard. And so we determine those priority standards, then we'll unpack those into, we've already done that math and science, into our knowledge and our skills, and we'll refine that a little bit as we go through the process of determining grade level proficiency, which is that last descriptor there. I've kind of skipped over one, but I'll go back to that. So still in understanding and implementing standards, that determining grade level proficiency is so important because you need that in order to design high quality assessments. And so that'll be some of the work that we do this year with math and science, because we haven't done that yet for those priority standards. ELA and social studies, we might get to grade level proficiency, we might not. We might just get through the unpacking of the priority standards this year, because we're only going to meet 3 times. But those are you really have to go through the understanding and implementing standards. I skipped over, you have to then also sequence all the standards. Even though they might not be a priority, we have to make sure that if it is a grade level standard, it is in our curriculum somewhere. Because otherwise, we're not meeting the state mandates. So that'll be one thing that we have to make sure we do, is sequence all of our standards. Once you get through everything in understanding and implementing standards, the rest of the steps can kind of be done in different order. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go right to assessment and then right to instructional practices and then right to resources. It really can be more fluid than that. It's just easier if they're in the list, but they don't have to be. But really, the best way to get the best resource, for example, is to really know what your standards are and have unpacked them and select a resource based on those and based on what you determined as your priority standards. And so we'll go through some of this work this year. Our new teams, like ELA and social science, will really be up in that understanding and implementing standards piece. Hopefully we could get through all of that and even determine grade level proficiency, especially for our priority standards. You know, if we can't quite get through that, then that'll be okay. Then we'll know where we need to move to next year. Our science and math teams will be able to do some of that. We'll be able to determine that grade level proficiency and then move into assessment and also move into the resources section. We already have resources, so now it's just making sure we select the right lessons that align to what our standards are and what our priority standards are. And so that'll be some of the work that our science and math teams do. And some of that work has already been started. It's just maybe we can be a little bit more refined, which is exciting. You know, I mean, so it's not that we haven't done any of it. Some of it just needs to be a little bit more refined. And so, Kelly, if you can go back to the very first document, the one, that one. If you could click, because these are all Google links, so you can click on those. So if you would click on, like under math, like K5 design tracking document. So it should open it. Yep. So here is the one for K5 math. So I've already started color coding because and this is just based on my review of all the documents and everything that we've done. When I meet with the K5 team for the first time, they might tell me, oh, actually, Carrie, we've already done this other thing too. Here's where it is. And then, great, we can color code something. And so this was just based on my initial review. So when we look at K5 math, you'll notice, like if anything's yellow, that means it's in progress. It's started, but maybe not completely done. If it's green, it's completed based on what I've seen. And if it's blank, it just hasn't been started yet, you know, or if it's still white. So you'll notice up in the, you know, the standards section, the reason I put understanding standards and unpacking as yellow is because I want to go in a little bit more depth with some of the unpacking in order to help us with determining proficiency. And so once we go into a little bit more depth, then that would be green. This year we'll really work on that grade level proficiency, sequencing all standards, and we'll begin to work on assessments. We'll also be able to, under the reviewing and selecting resources, you'll see all of that's yellow. Because we've selected a new resource, we just haven't fully aligned that resource to all of our priority standards and to our sequence standards because we haven't done all of that work yet. So I anticipate that this year, some of those things, if not all of them, will also be able to be green. So as you can see, I like lists. And I like crossing things off when they're done. And so that's why I like the color coding. And I think it's a really nice way for the teams to be able to track our progress, for principals to be able to see where we are, and for our Board of Education to be able to see where the teams are in our progress as a way to say, hey, this is what we're working on, these are our goals for the year, and then, you know, we can show that. The last piece on here that I wanted to get some feedback on, and then we can talk about lots of things if we have questions, but there is this section here that's called Engaging Parents or Guardians in the Community. And this is a really important step, but it has to be done real strategically. And so, you know, this is a place that I would like to have some feedback on. That first bullet there says, like, host community feedback opportunities. Really, these are focus groups, where we would bring in a focus group of parents, maybe at the high school level or maybe at the K4 level, and ask some very specific targeted questions about whatever the curriculum is. Maybe it would be the math, or maybe it would be English, you know, whatever it is, and get some feedback. Then the team would review that feedback, and really then the team's output after that is to create some parent supports. Because that's really what parents need, is how do I help my child at home? And so if we ask them real targeted questions, then we can get that, and then we can create parent supports. And so my question really to the group, you know, community members and teachers is, have we done focus groups before? Have we done those at any building level, at any district level? Outside, I know we did them for the CEC audit. I know that we had them for that. And so that was just mainly around math for the CEC audit. But I didn't know if we had done them before.
Just once at the high school, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. I know, what was it, 3 years ago?
It was 3 years ago.
I know Joe was involved in that.
Okay.
There was talk about different electives and whatnot to bring in, where to go with some of the classes. I know that was one of the times when we talked about we just didn't have enough students involved annually to sustain a full engineering program. So so not to go down the pathway of trying to implement a full engineering program. We looked at medical pathways and some other kind of hot topics, as far as fastest growing industry in outside of the fastest growing industries, for work, and just what would make sense to try to bring along, to North Boone, and that was 3 years ago. So, but that's the only time I've done an interest group really to talk and kind of go down deep in on it.
Okay.
None at our building we had, when we had Envision Math, it was more of an informational parenting need, but not a focus group at all.
Okay.
Well, and they weren't consistently, like, it was like once when we got the new
Yes.
curriculum, that was it.
It's kind of like an open house.
Sure. So it would have been in 2012.
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe in 2012,
Okay. Has anyone ever sat on a focus group with something like this or had experience with it?
The only other thing that would come anywhere close, I think, would be the SIP district's SIP, but it was pretty broad, general kind of thing. So, I think something a little more focused would might provide some good feedback.
And it sounds like the work that was done with Envision, the informational opportunities were really more like informational in the sense that this is a curriculum.
Yeah.
Really
It wasn't
focused
really helping them.
group,
No.
and it was potentially site specific,
Right.
not like bring the whole
Right.
Kind of to
K
show
four
them.
community together.
Yes, no, not at all. It was to show parents maybe some resources where they could access it if they had a computer, just a vague overview, more or less.
Okay. Based on parental involvement at the schools, do you think we would get more parental involvement if we hosted them at school specific, or if we hosted them here? And again, we would do the same thing, even if we did at elementary. Of course, elementary is where we have 3 schools, the K4 buildings. I just wonder parental involvement, if we were going to invite or select, or I don't know how. Sometimes with focus groups, people are selected, reached out to say we'd like to be a part of this focus group, and usually that's kind of how it's done, because then people will say yes, I'll be there, or no, I can't, because then you can reach out to someone else. And that's how I would like to do it. If we do it, actually have people that we reach out to ask them to be on it. And I'm just this is something that comes a little bit later in the process too, because you have to have a lot of things defined before you can really talk to parents about what the curriculum is going to be. But this is somewhere that I'm just wondering how it might work best in our community. So maybe at schools, I don't know.
I think that might be good, just so that the parents, I think maybe they might feel more comfortable with in their school.
Less informal, but more informal.
Yeah.
Which might make people feel more at ease.
Not closer to where they live too.
That's true.
They're capitalizing on some established relationships. So, I don't know. And I would really probably depend a bit on what you were trying to get.
Right. And in this case, if we do them in this way, and this is where we'll have to kind of decide. This is an area that I want to do. It's just how we do it is I'm still kind of figuring out, and that's definitely something I want us all to figure out together what will work best. Because when you do these, you want to be able to get specific feedback and information about a specific curriculum. So if we were going to do it, for example, for K5 math, or maybe K4 math, at the elementaries, then we would do 5th grade at the upper or something. But you would want to have very targeted questions around math. Show them some things about the new math curriculum, and then ask them very targeted questions about what kind of supports do you need at home. Because that's really what we're trying to get, so that way then the committee could build some of those supports if we don't already have access to them. Now, our new K4 math curriculum, the nice thing is it has the online access for students, and I talked to Molly today about getting some information out to parents about how they can access it home. So I need to do some playing around with the online platform to make sure that that's working. before we tell all parents, hey, guess what, you can go here and it'll work, and then it doesn't. So we're gonna do a little playing around with that, but that'll be something we get out, that we do wanna get out to parents, so at least they can access it at home. So if their child comes home, even in second grade, and they're like, oh gosh, I'm not quite sure how to help you with this math homework, well, guess what, hey, look, we can log in and we see something, so. But other than that, I mean, I think this will be something that we can kind of build as a community of how best to support our parents and how best to get feedback so then we can provide supports. Because I'd love to be able to provide more supports to our parents.
I think that's something we have struggled with as a district is giving parents the tools to be able to do that. I think we communicate with them, but I don't necessarily know that we are directing them in the right place. So the fact that we're even looking at that, I think parents will feel heard and supported just in the process. So I think that's a good direction as a district.
Carrie, what would you see as a plan for following up? This is a cyclical process as you revise and refine. So what would you like to see out of it in terms of returning to these areas?
So that's really, in that last part, establish the process for continuous improvement is really where we do that. So, great question. So one of the things that we'll do is we will create an implementation plan with non-negotiables. And so like I mentioned with K-5 math, we'll do that to really say this year, with our new resource, what are the 3 things we really want to focus on and get good at in year 1. And then we'll plan for year 2. And then, because otherwise if we try to do everything at once, we don't feel like we get good at anything. So that'll be one thing that the teams will do. The next bullet, or that next descriptor, use and analyze data. That's something that we will have to design, and I think that'll be something that would be great for us to talk about, not necessarily today, but once we get to the point of what data are we going to use to analyze implementation. One of those pieces of data will be those curriculum-based measures that we create, those assessments. That's one piece. But that's an assessment measure, based on student data. What else can we look at in terms of implementation? Do we want to talk about one thing that, I'm not saying we're doing this, we're saying this is some things that some places do, but they do like lesson studies within the schools, and they as a team talk about, hey, we're all working around this one thing. Over the next 2 weeks, we're all going to watch each other do it, and then we're going to provide each other feedback on it. That's a great way to work on implementation and to work on and analyzing data in a non-threatening way, because it's teachers working with each other. It's not an evaluation. It's, hey, as a 4th grade team, or as a 5th, 6th grade ELA team, we're all really working on helping our students, write opinion pieces or write argumentative essays. We're all going to try this new way of instructing, and we're all going to watch each other do it, and then we're going to talk about how did it go, how did it not go, what went well, all of those things, and that can be data then we can use to talk about those, because curriculum is not just about what's written on the paper, it's about the instruction. You can have beautiful curriculum on paper, but if instruction doesn't change it, and if instruction is just what's on paper, it's not going to get anywhere. So that's part of, I think, what we'll have to design. And there's lots of different ways we can do that. I'm very much not one to dictate that, but one to work with a team to help collaboratively build what that would look like. Then the provide feedback on implementation. When I have teachers in parentheses, that what I mean there is teachers will provide feedback. I want to hear from teachers. And the curriculum teams need to hear from teachers. Next week when K-5 math meets, that'll be part of what we're talking about. And what are some things that have gone well? What are some things that we're struggling with right now with our new resource? Because there's going to be things that we're struggling with. There's going to be some things that have gone well. And so that'll be a good way for us to share and get that feedback, and then to use that feedback to say, well, what are those things we really want to focus on this year? And then that review the curriculum on an annual basis based on teacher feedback. It is really good to, on an annual basis, even once you have the curriculum fully ready and everyone's doing it and it's all going well, but there's always things that could be tweaked, or there's always data that we need to look at. And a lot of that can really be done once we get the curriculum all built, a lot of that can be done in grade level teams at buildings to really be looking at data and talking about data and then saying, wow, our students have really been struggling with this one piece. Let's go back to our curriculum. Oh, it is there. Okay, it's there. Well, then what do we now need to do, or how can we get support? Or maybe it's that we realize, yeah, we all are struggling with how best to teach it, and that's okay. And so there's sometimes things that are new or more challenging to teach, and then we provide feedback and support and all of that. So that's really where that comes in. I hope I answered your question, Carl. And I think that using and analyzing data, what we'll need to determine as a district of what are those data pieces we want to use. We'll have the curriculum-based measures, which are student assessments, but I think it's also really important to have some implementation measures that we can use, and that can help teachers grow, because that's the whole point. We're all here to learn, whether we're a student or a teacher. That's really the whole process. I know I talked a lot. Please, questions, thoughts?
Great start, all organized.
I could hear this already, but I got really excited when I saw the color chart. I like it too. I did. I was like, oh God. I'm like, yes, because you can see what I was able to get done. Not much. But you can see where it's going.
We can see where it's going.
You can see where it's going. I really like that.
And anyone can click on any of those links. They're all view-only Google links, as long as you have a North Boone login. As long as you're logged into Google with your North Boone login. If you're not, if you're logged in with your personal, we'll say you don't have access, but you just have to log out and log back in. But you can see those, and really, like next week, when the K-5 is meeting next week, I anticipate some of these other things becoming yellow, or becoming, and maybe something will be green, but any of those, you can see, it'll, so we already have one for 6-8 math, we already have one for 9-12 math, and then for K-5 science, 6-8 science, and 9-12 science, because those teams have already been working. And then ELA and social studies will start with a blank slate, and once the first time the team meets, that becomes great, which is exciting. So, it's like, I think it's exciting to see the progress, to be able to see, like, we started here and now we're going through it. It really is, yeah. Yeah, any of those documents, Kelly, are the ones I was talking about. Those are all live links, anything there that's underlined, which we don't have to click on all of them, but anyone can look at them. And what you see there now that's already color-coded is just based on my initial analysis of all the documents that I've been able to review over the last 2 months. But I anticipate that as I meet with teachers, some of the things that were my initial review could change, because they might be able to point out some things that I just didn't know were there, or maybe be able to explain some things, and then I'll understand it, because it's always hard to sit and review documents and not be able to ask the people who created them questions, so it's really just based on my initial review of where we are.
I can tell you from a board perspective, it's exciting to see documents put in place that are living documents that help track the progress of these really complicated processes. And I know that I know we meet a bit. Our meetings aren't necessarily regularly scheduled for this committee, but having just a time where we can share in this group summatively about what's going on, and being able to look back at these documents and track that will be great. And this is also, I think, going to be extremely helpful to communicate to the board as well. We've been asking for data, but asking for ways to parse through this at a much, maybe like the 3,000 foot, 30,000 foot. So.
And I think if we would want to put regular meetings on, it could be something where maybe we meet as this committee, like we meet quarterly. If we meet 4 times, or maybe 3 times during the school year. I don't know about the summer, because I know with teachers and things that it's harder to meet in the summer. But I think that's something we could definitely do, Carl, if we want to. Is just so that way we can check in, like checkpoints, and just say, here's where we are. And if there's something then in particular that if a team is reviewing a resource, then of course would have to come, to the committee, and then have to eventually go to board for approval. That could be something then that we would be able to talk about, and then we could always schedule an actual committee to have a meeting if we need it. But that would be something then that it's not not that it would be a shock, but that way it's just clear, like where we're going and what part of the process we're in. So I think we could definitely schedule something, if that's what you would like, I'm fine with that too. We could put them on the calendar. And that way too, everyone knows, and they're set, and it might make it easier for people to coordinate schedules.
Yeah.
It's sometimes nice to celebrate the progress too, because this is a new document, and it doesn't look like a lot of lines under each category. Each one of those subcategories is a huge amount of work.
Huge amount of work.
So, you know, oh, we only got one green, but gosh, did you see which one it was?
Right.
That was amazing that we got that done to have a celebration together for the progress we're making.
And that understanding and implementing standards section is, that and the assessment design, those take so much time. And because you have to really dig in, and you have to do deep analysis of what the standards actually, what they say and what they're actually asking students to do. And then you have to say, and what would it look like if a student demonstrated this? And how do we build an assessment to make sure that they're demonstrating it at the right level of complexity, but then also giving us the information we need to make sure that they understand it, or at what level of proficiency they understand it. Because maybe they're not proficient, but then where are they? We need to know. We need to know if they're a little bit below, or if they're a lot below proficient, and or if they're above. We need to be able to know that.
And it impacts everybody's actual classroom practice, which was nice about this first document that breaks out the mapping. But we have some time to work with math at the elementary level and really get to know that curriculum and reflect on our practice before we
solidify.
Or jump into ELAs when we're not ready.
Yeah, and that was
very well paced.
I know that I know ELA, a lot of teachers want to start working on it, and I understand that. For K-4, and the reason I did talk to the principals about this, and I said, with only having so many teachers, and we have teachers on the science committee and on the math committee, if I formed ELA, some of those same teachers wouldn't be able to be out of their classroom that many times, because there's some teachers that want to be on them, and they wouldn't be able to be on all of them because they don't want to be out of their classroom that many times. Which, yes, I don't want them out of their classroom that many times either, because that's hard. So, I think as an elementary teacher, the challenge is always that you are trying to teach all of those subjects in a day, and so it's really good to really continue to focus on science and math for another year without adding another layer of ELA a little bit too soon. So,
Thank you.
it is hard. I know. Even though I know there's lots of people that are like, oh yay, let's start ELA. I mean, I know, but.
Well, but I also think that we chose a curriculum that for a lot of K-4 teachers is very different from the way that they have been structuring their math instruction. And I think that process will be important for them to feel comfortable with how it's going to move forward. I think it's great. I think it's great for students, but I do know that there are chunks of classrooms where that's maybe a new thought, or they've tried it, but it wasn't quite as successful as they would want it to be. So I think knowing that as they're looking to the new curriculum, I don't think anyone's like, yeah, give me something new.
Let's do something else. Right.
Well, I don't want to overstep our boundaries on what we can do for scheduling. Is this something that, as a group, we can recommend that the committee have quarterly meetings or more regular meetings? What would you guys think about actually having something on the books so that we didn't necessarily need an item?
I think that would be nice, because normally what was happening the last several years was you just get an email saying, sometimes it was like 2 days from when you got the email, or a week. So I would like it to be planned. That's just fine. Just because I'm a planner, then I can pencil it in and not make any other paper.
And I think too, for the teams as they're working, it would be nice for them to know. And I could even then add those to this document, so that way if they're like, here, on this document, I could just add, because this is, again, it's a Google document, this thing. So, I mean, I could add that, our next CIA committee meeting is October 25th, I'm making it up. Don't do it October 25th, that's a Friday. But our next one is this date, and I can even put that there, because some of the teachers who are on these committees might want to come. I mean, they have to, but they might want to come, because maybe what we are going to highlight is, let's highlight the changes what the work we've really done on math the last 2 months, because let's talk to the committee about that. And so then you'll just talk to this whole committee, so then we could have those just even on here.
That would be
And any teacher who wants to come, then could come to the meeting. It's an open meeting. So
That's a great idea.
so I could easily add it to this document. And then I'd like to post this document on our internal portal somewhere. I'll talk to Jerry, maybe on the curriculum tab. There's a curriculum tab. Then that way it's there, and it's a Google document, so if something changes, everyone can see it.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Brian and I were just having a little sidebar. I think maybe if we work through Dr. Greenlee to send an email out to the committee and try and settle on a date and frequency that works well for the majority of people. And I assume it's probably around this time, maybe once a month or even every other, but we would have something like so even if they were just summative informational meetings, I think that there's a lot of value to that.
And I think every other month would probably suffice, unless you feel like you need updates more often. But I mean, just looking at where we are in terms of September will be light because it's only math, but after that we pick up if there's a few more things coming in. But I mean, I think every other month would give us an opportunity to kind of highlight some of the things that have been done, and then if there's anything we need to discuss or talk about in the process too. But
which I would pivot a little bit to a topic of other discussion that's very closely related to this, and just as another informational point that I think the board has gone through in the past few months, a goal setting process for the next year at least and beyond, attempting to set priorities and begin to be a little clearer about what we've articulated our goals are as a board. Some of that I don't have the list in front of me, and I'm not going to pretend I'll make them all up, but related to technology and curricular assessment. And part of that is I think we're attempting to be a little more intentional about making sure that we're utilizing and leveraging our resources at the committee level more. And so more frequent and consistent meetings as those goals percolate down to us as a committee, I think would also be valuable. What we're trying to attempt to do is not just have a vision that gets set to a burner and then left alone, but instead, similar to what we're proposing here with the curricular assessment plans, that we have goal assessment plans essentially as well, and we have goals that are being tracked essentially. And so I know that Joe has articulated definitely at least a few of those bullet points for the board goals coming down to us as a curriculum committee. We just recently approved a very broad technology plan last spring. I know that there's some work that we still need to do with that and more refinement there. Brian, what else am I missing?
I think it was more just a technology purchase. I don't think.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think there was a whole lot of plan, which would be nice to have.
Yeah, exactly.
To see how it goes into what we're doing here. So
that's maybe a fair way to say that. Yeah, and also data assessment is an area that we're extremely interested in, and that is one of our articulated board goals, and I know that that's obviously directly tied to our work here.
Good to see it in the works here.
Absolutely. So yes, having more regular meetings will tie definitely into that. Yeah, any other questions or discussion for? Yeah, it's a great
You
story.
explained it very well.
I talked a lot, I'm sorry. Hopefully the next one I won't have to talk so much.
So like I said, we try and carry an office. So the next.
Thank you. I'm going to be in that office. Tomorrow's Jim's last day. He's retiring, so then I moved into his office. But we were waiting for him. I didn't want to kick him out. Yeah. I am surprised that there's still as much stuff in there as there is.
Okay, I have no official announcements for us as a committee, and as the bullet point says here on our agenda, we will be TBD be on our next meeting date, but we will attempt to make those work for as many as we can and have them more frequently and regularly. So that will be a priority, and I will talk with Dr. Greenlee and Joe about that, and we'll get those in the books. Anyone have anything else for the committee? Okay. Well, in that case, it is about 4:40.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.